Well, it's been a big week for new MPs with the first sitting week of the 43rd Parliament. Since the election campaign started, we've been joined on a weekly basis by our regular Polly's panel, and they're back again today. Here in the studio, Labor's Stephen Jones, and in Melbourne, his regular Friday afternoon jousting partner, Liberal MP Josh Frydenberg. Gentlemen, welcome to both of you.
Good afternoon,
Good
Ali.
afternoon, Ali.
Josh.
Well,
hi, Stephen.
First sitting week of the 43rd Parliament for both of you, your first ever sitting week. How was it? Josh Frydenberg?
It was terrific. Tony Abbott had a great start to this parliamentary session and achieved a historic victory on the floor of the House of Representatives. Not since 1962 has the government been defeated in the way that it was, 73 to 72 votes on a motion, and hopefully that augurs well for the future ahead for us.
And Stephen Jones, that's the point actually, isn't it? Although that was a very minor piece of legislation, it was perhaps indicative of what we're heading for.
Can I just correct Josh there on a fact? It was actually 1975, the last time that a government was defeated on the floor
That's
of
not
government.
what the clerk said.
And if you check with the Parliamentary Library, as I did, you'll find, Josh, that it was 1975. Look, the key point, Ali, you're right.
It was a long time ago.
It was a long time ago.
You better tell the clerk.
It was a long time ago, and it was on an equally obscure issue. And the fact is, it's going to happen over the course of this Parliament with the numbers so evenly balanced, independents holding the balance of power. We're going to lose some votes as the government. We acknowledge that. We just hope that we can constructively work with the crossbenchers, honour the agreement that we've got, the parliamentary reform agreement, and get our key policy objectives through the Parliament.
Was it as you expected it to be, sitting there in the chamber, something you've never done before as an MP?
Look, there are some things that were unexpected. I've heard Tony Abbott talk about his dream of a kinder, gentler polity, and then I see him walking around the chamber looking like sometimes he wants to thump people. That was different. Perhaps it's the difference of being up close and personal versus on television.
Josh, what about you? There's certainly, I guess a lot of people describe the first couple of days as relatively mild-mannered, but it's not exactly a kinder, gentler polity, is it? Which is rapidly heading into the same vein as a new paradigm, I think, for banned phrases.
Well, the first thing was we had the sort of official welcoming ceremony, an Aboriginal ceremony, which was very moving. We had the Governor-General's speech, and we all had an opportunity to share the moment with our families. And then we got into business in the next day, and that's what the Parliament's about. It's an adversarial system, and I think these changes to the standing orders effectively look to have made a difference, because for the first time in over 3 years, the Labor Party is starting to try to be relevant to the questions that have been asked of them. So that's an improvement, and let's see where it goes. The other thing that was interesting this week is we had our colleagues, Stephen and I, had our colleagues making their maiden speeches, and there were some really interesting comments among them.
I want to have a look at maiden speeches in a minute, but if I can ask you about tactics, because we certainly saw that, didn't we, Stephen Jones? I mean, the focus that's going to be on tactics in this Parliament, and we saw that with Labor's nomination of a coalition Deputy Speaker, Peter Slipper.
Look, interesting that another historic moment where you have the government in good faith nominating a very eminent and well qualified person from the other side of politics to be a Deputy Speaker. He won that position against the support, against the vote of the majority of his own side. But you know what I think, Ali? I think a whole heap of these things, the operations of Parliament, the standing orders, they really are insiders' issues, and I think that most people are interested in what Parliament does.
But the issue of Peter Slipper as Deputy Speaker is key, isn't it? Because even if there was no deal done, what it means is that if Harry Jenkins is out of the House, Peter Slipper is in the chair, Labor doesn't lose 2 votes, which if you put up the Deputy Speaker, you would have lost a second vote if Harry Jenkins wasn't in the chair.
Look, there is absolutely no doubt that there is an advantage to us if, on those rare occasions when Harry Jenkins isn't in the chair, it means we don't lose a vote in the chamber.
Josh Frydenberg, was that a win for the government?
Absolutely not. It was a tactical blunder for the government.
In what way? They got the man.
Stephen must have his fingers and toes crossed there, because when he says in good faith they nominated Peter Slipper, they were hoping that Peter Slipper would guarantee confidence and supply to the government. In fact, he put out a press release saying that he was not doing that, and as Stephen says, he is eminently qualified, and now the coalition has the good fortune of having both the Deputy Speaker and the second Deputy Speaker from their side, and I think that's a positive development for us without having to give up any numbers.
If it was such a positive development, Josh, why didn't your own side vote for him?
Well,
Fair
can
point.
I say, because we also put up Bruce Scott, and we got both of them, which is a great development. But what we should focus on is the way that Julia Gillard dudded two of her Victorian colleagues in Harry Jenkins, who has ended up being Speaker, but not through the support of the Labor Party, but because Tony Abbott kept pushing his case.
nominated him and voted for him, Josh.
How many weeks did it even take you, to get to that point? And then secondly, Anna Burke, the member for Chisholm, who was the Deputy Speaker in the last Parliament, desperately wanted the job in this Parliament, but then Labor dudded her again. So they actually are not very fair to their colleagues on the other side.
Want to respond, Stephen?
Look, I think, as I said a moment ago, all of these things are fascinating to us as political insiders, but I think most Australians are more focused on whether this Parliament can actually function to deal with the big challenges that the country is facing over the next 3 years. The critical issue of tax reform, the critical issue of climate change, and some of the other issues that we've identified and that we want to work cooperatively with the crossbenchers on. We've got some proposals around gambling and dealing with the cancer of problem gambling and a range of other issues. I think they're the big issues that most Australians want us to focus on, not these insider debates
No, but
about...
I suppose the ultimate thing is no matter what you want to focus on, if you can't get it through Parliament, then you can't make progress. And another interesting point...
I agree with you, Ali, and that is why Julia Gillard is absolutely committed to negotiating in good faith and working with the crossbenchers and with the opposition. And yet all we're seeing from Tony Abbott at this stage is an insane desire to want to bring the Parliament down. We had one of his people on the doors earlier this week predicting it'll be days, not weeks, before the government falls.
Josh Frydenberg, I'll come to you because I wanted to ask you a bit about something else that happened this week, which I guess also was a little bit of a warning about what could lie ahead. Christopher Pyne was ejected only for an hour. I don't think he missed a division. But I just wonder if you've all been given a be good no matter what order, because if you're thrown out of Parliament for any length of time, you could miss a division, and that could be a disaster for either side.
Sure, and the fact that Christopher Pyne was thrown out for that hour is testament to where Harry Jenkins is coming from. But we're all on notice not to miss a division and
you don't
and
think
be,
Harry Jenkins
well-behaved.
is playing the independent that he says he's playing?
Well, I think he's doing his best so far, and certainly Tony Abbott said that he's an ideal candidate for the job with the experience and the pedigree. So let's see how it plays out. But one thing that Tony Abbott did make very clear during question time this week was the broken promises of Julia Gillard's government. So it's okay for Stephen to say let's get together and pass important legislation, but hang on, you want to now pass a carbon tax, and this wasn't their policy that they took to the Australian people before the election.
Hang on a moment, Josh. Hang on a moment. We've been very clear. We believe in climate change. We want to move on the best policies that are going to address the problem of climate change. We went to the last election saying the most efficient and effective way of dealing with that is an emissions trading scheme, a scheme not 6 months ago supported by 50% of the coalition. We didn't get a majority in Parliament. We did not get a majority in Parliament. There are views across the crossbenches.
So you now have the
we are still going into those negotiations and those discussions very firmly of the view that the most efficient way of dealing with reducing carbon emissions and putting a price on carbon is through an emissions trading scheme. However, it would be foolish of us at this point in time, before the negotiations even start, to say to the crossbenchers and the Senate, as Tony Abbott appears to be saying, my way or the highway.
It does raise interesting questions, though. I mean, how will the Climate Committee actually make any progress towards reaching a consensus if it's got no coalition members on it?
Well, it's unfortunate, and as late as yesterday, the Prime Minister issued the challenge to the Leader of the Opposition to get with the program. Unfortunately, it hasn't been accepted.
Will there be a change of heart, do you think?
No, and this is the key point here. Julia Gillard said, and these are not my words, these are hers, no government I lead will introduce a carbon tax. And Wayne Swan mimicked those words. And here we have a government that is going full steam ahead for a carbon tax. And when you consider the cost of living pressures that Australians are currently facing and the impact that this will have on electricity prices, and not the wealthy ones, but the people who can least afford it, that's a significant issue, and that's something that Tony Abbott is passionate about.
Something tells me that we're going to talk about this issue quite a lot over the coming weeks, but just before we run out of time, let me ask you, go back to that question of maiden speeches, because they are significant. Josh Frydenberg, when do you intend to make yours, and how significant do you think it is for a new MP, the maiden speech?
I'm making mine on the 25th of October, and I think it is a significant statement of both your personal journey to this point, but also the values and your motivation for entering public life.
And you can bet that everyone will go back to it. If you ever sort of climb that greasy pole right to the top, everyone will go back to that initial statement.
Well, that's exactly right. You're hoping, but also you're hoping that it's your own roadmap and that you can look back on it in a decade from here and say, actually, the way I've acted and the way I think about things are in a sense consistent with those broad thoughts.
Stephen Jones?
An opportunity for me to set out the things that I believe in, as I know that Josh will be doing when he gives his maiden speech, the things that I believe in, the people who, as Josh said, have assisted me on my journey to Parliament. And I'll be talking about the fact that I'm a trade unionist, and I've been one for over 15 years. That's sometimes hurled at me as a point of attack and derision. I'm very proud of it. I'll be saying that I'm a proud member of the Labor Party and the long tradition of the Labor Party and the things that I believe in, and how that'll inform my values and the way that I vote and the legislation that I advance for as long as I'm lucky enough to represent my electorate.
Oh, we look forward to hearing both your roadmaps. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us. Stephen Jones in Sydney and Josh Frydenberg in Melbourne.
Thanks, Ali. Thanks, Stephen.
Thanks, Josh.
Or two